Hi everyone, I'm Hayley. I'm always in the craft room, but not this week because I've been to London. So welcome to another Friday Sews video. I am going to talk you through what I've been sewing this week, but since the thumbnail was so London heavy, let's get started with my trip to our nation's capital. So one day this week, my husband and I dropped our kids off at school, jumped in the car, whizzed to the station, got the last spot in the station car park, and off we went to London. And the purpose of the trip was to visit my parents, basically. The boys, my husband and my father, were going to some boring car show, and I thought it would be nice for Mum and I to spend the day together. But I don't shop for clothes. And recreational shopping is what we would have done in days gone by. So I thought, what can I do with Mum for the day that's interesting, both to people who shop for clothes and people who mainly shop for fabric? Oh yes, Liberty of London. So that's where we headed. Now, we actually met at Macculloch and Wallis, which is a fabric shop just behind Liberty's, that has on the main floor fabrics, yarns, interfacing, and then downstairs is an Aladdin's cave of haberdashery. So that's where we met, and that is where I made my first purchase. And surprise, surprise, it wasn't fabric actually. They specialise, as one might expect, in British fabrics, a lot of tweed and suitings and shirting cottons, and just generally more formal stuff than suits my lifestyle. I'm a viscose and jersey kind of girl, and they didn't have a lot in that range. They did have some beautiful rib knits, which I know are all the rage at the moment. We did have a wander down Oxford Street, and all of the shop displays were those bodycon skirts in a rib fabric. And I ummed and ahed over them a little bit, but for me, and I'm sure this is just a me problem, the texture of the ribs seems like it would be uncomfortable and scratchy. I do remember once having a rib knit polo neck, probably in the late 90s, early noughties, and I did find it scratchy. Even though the fabric wasn't scratchy, the rib knits were. Like I say, probably just me. We know I am a very sensitive soul. Anyway, I didn't buy any fabric there, but downstairs in the haberdashery department, I picked up this. Oh, being all organised and keeping things together. Right, it is the Gutermann shade card. And if I open it up, you will see that it is for working out what shade of thread you want for your fabric. That each of these little cards are covered in actual fabric. It's not thread, but it is real fabric rather than a printed one. So I know you can get a printed shade card, but they told me this is much, much more accurate. It's not inexpensive. I think I paid around about £20 for this, but I just think it is going to be so useful because we all know I love being in the craft room. I hate leaving the house. So quite often if my husband is passing a hobby craft, I will say to him, "Oh, love, can you just nip in for a reel of thread for me?" And he'll go, "Yeah, what colour?" And I'll say things that to a non-sewer or someone who isn't interested in colour make no sense. Like, "Oh, a royal purple or a very deep teal." And he's just like, purple to him could be anything from like the palest lilac through to magenta. Like, who knows what you're going to get. So being able to grab a fabric, hold it up and say, "Well, please can I have 571, 250 metre reel?" How amazing will that be? I thought it would also be good for online orders. I don't buy much fabric online. And if I am buying a fabric online that's not white, navy, black, and they offer a thread matching service, I do normally use it. But you know, sometimes I'll pull a fabric out of the stash for which I don't have a matching thread, and maybe I'm doing an online order for some bits and bobs, and I can add a thread on knowing that I'm getting exactly the right colour, rather than trying to match on a monitor, which who knows how accurate things show up really. Even if I look on my iPad versus my laptop, I do often see very different tones. So yeah, not the cheapest, but I thought so useful. And with a tool like this, I always think there's no point umming and ahhing and buying it in 10 years' time. I might as well get 10 years more use out of it. So that is my Gutterman shade card from Macculloch and Wallis. Then we headed over to Liberty, and if you've never been, it's just such a beautiful store. The actual building is stunning. The architecture is fantastic. The window displays, just how they merchandise everything. Now, I will say, most things in there are well outside of my price range, but it's still lovely to have a look, get some inspiration, and I can always find something. So we had a look around the beauty department, had a quick look at the shoes. We went to their stationery department, which is just beautiful and stunning, and we bought some cards because they have all of their gorgeous Liberty prints on stationery. So then we went upstairs to look at the fabric, and I have to tell you, I didn't buy any fabric. I did buy some haberdashery, which we'll come to. And I was thinking about why this was, because I love Liberty prints, I really do. And it's not inexpensive, but it's not the most expensive fabric I've ever bought. I think a metre of Tana lawn is about £26. You do have to bear in mind it's very narrow. And I think that is partly what put me off. So I have two problems with Liberty fabrics, and I don't want to sound like I'm having a go at them. I'm not. They're a wonderful store. I love them. I would love to support them by buying more fabric. And the reason I don't is twofold. Firstly, they're still on these narrow widths. Now, I'm sure it's to do with the manufacturing process, but my issue with it is I can get a top in my size from a metre of fabric. I can cut out a front and a back next to each other. If I fold the fabric like that, I can do it on the fold, but you know, I'd be happy to do it single layout to save fabric. With the width of a Liberty fabric, I can't do it. Say a normal fabric is 150 wide, so I've got 75 centimetres for the front, 75 for the back. Perfect. With a Liberty, which is so much narrower, I can get a front, 75, and then I've got a remnant that's not big enough for the back, but it's really annoyingly big. So I end up having to buy two widths, and then I end up with this huge strip down the side, which actually I could get a back out of if I did a centre back seam, but I've had to buy two lots, so I don't need to. It's just a frustrating width. I'm sorry, it is. Also, my other problem, and this is actually a bigger problem for me, is the fabric bases they offer. Their Tana lawn is beautiful. I have some here to show you. It is utterly gorgeous. It's so soft. The quality really is unmatched. So I've got two to show you that I bought on a different trip. One of them is this, which has been in the stash for absolutely ages. I'm not sure if it's still available. I didn't see it in the store. And here is the print. I really love it. I love the colours. The fabric is so smooth. But I just don't wear cotton a lot. If they did this print on a viscose chalet, I would be all over it. Any of their prints, all of their prints, I would be buying so much of it. But they don't. It's all on a cotton lawn. So here is a tank top I made many years ago, early in my sewing career, as you might be able to tell from the terrible binding. How cute is this print? Everybody I show it to sees different things. Tell me in the comments below what you see in this print. Personally, I see horses. Anyway, I absolutely love this print, but I rarely wear this top. And part of it is probably I made it early in my sewing career, so it doesn't fit so well. But I'm not desperate to make this one up because I know I don't reach for it because, well, you'll see. It needs ironing or at least steaming every time I wear it. You probably can get away with steaming because it is a really fine, beautiful cotton. But, look, you can see an iron over there. I press as I sew, and I actually really enjoy pressing as I'm sewing. For some reason, having to iron my clothes really annoys me. And I think part of it is actually because the second I sit in a car and put a seatbelt on, it's going to get creased anyway. And I live in the sticks. Everywhere I go, unless it's just for a walk, is in the car. So, yeah. But also, I brought another tank to show you that's made in a viscose. And look how differently they drape. This one is swingy and floaty, and this one is just stiff. So their Tana lawn is amazing quality. Their prints are fantastic, as in the design of the prints is fantastic, but also the clarity of the print is absolutely unrivaled. They're so crisp and clear. But I just don't want cotton lawn. I'm sorry, Liberty. So, one thing this trip has done is got me thinking about this fabric again. I need to get it out the stash. I need to use it. I do love it. And I wondered if one way to improve the drape would be to cut it on the bias. So you might know that earlier this year I have made a bias cut top. It is the George's Portfolio Mellow dress cut into a top. And you can see the beautiful bias kind of drape and flow and shaping that this gives. So I wondered, what if I cut this into a mellow top on the bias? What do you think? Would that improve the drape and flow and give me a top that I'm actually going to wear? Because this boxy tank, I don't wear it much. And, you know, it's a beautiful fabric. I'm going to get it into my wardrobe. So that's that fabric. I will show you what I bought on this trip, and it was in the haberdashery department. Oh, I will say I had a good look at their silk crepe de chine. And what I'd say about that is it just doesn't suit my lifestyle. I just feel too dressed up and ritzy glitzy in a shiny crepe de chine. I would use a crepe de chine backwards so that the matte side is out, but you can't do that with Liberty's gorgeous prints. I did think about it, pulled some out, had a look. It's very obvious that it's the wrong side of the print. So yeah, and they do have crafting cotton weight, but it's very rough, and you know, it would be for crafty things, and I don't tend to be a particularly crafty sewer, if you know what I mean. Anyway, here's what I did buy in my gorgeous purple bag from the haberdashery section next door, where they also have the crafting cottons. So if you go to Liberty and you're looking at the fabric, do be aware there's another bit near customer service that has more fabrics that's more like home dec weight. Not really home dec weight, craft weight. And while I was in there having a poke around, I spotted these beautiful scissors. I'm going to cover my face in the hopes the camera focuses. Come on. We're trying that again, and look, it is actually focusing on the scissors. So they're metal from head to toe, and I broke my last pair, which were a kind of traditional metal blades with plastic tortoiseshell handles. I just snapped them one day, the handle. I don't think I was being really rough with them or anything. Knowing me, I was probably just cutting yarn. But anyway, I thought these looked more indestructible, and most importantly, they're turquoise. So what a great addition to the sewing room. I've not had any embroidery scissors in here since I broke my last ones a while ago. So really pleased to have those. After we had a good look around the haberdashery, we went to Liberty's Cafe. I didn't actually know they had one, but it was really lovely. And we had 2 pots of tea and a gorgeous slice of cake to share because it was huge. It was absolutely delicious. And yeah, just to wander around the shop. I think we used every loo in the building. honestly, my mum, as a teenager, worked in a department store, a proper, are you being served type affair. So she was enjoying the nostalgia aspect of it, and she kept saying, we could spend all day here, and we very nearly did. It was such an enjoyable visit, and it was a real fun thing to do. As I say, when one of you's interested in fabric and one of you isn't, just to soak up the atmosphere and all of the wonderful things. We also nipped to the Christmas shop, which is on the top floor. It's a bit early for me, but it was nice to have a look round. That said, as crafters, if we're making things for Christmas, we need to get cracking, don't we? So yeah, stay tuned for a Christmas plans video that may be coming to this channel soon. So what have I been making this week when I did make it over to the craft room? The answer is my Macculloch Walker Mayor top. Now, this pattern has been discontinued. However, it's really similar to the Seamwork Handsy tee. So if you are looking for something along these lines, check that out. So this is as far as I've got with it. I'm pretty pleased, to be honest, to have got this far even. And yeah, I had to give some real consideration to the seam finishing on this. It is a really floaty polyester that I bought years ago on eBay. This was a remnant I was working with, and it's one of those really tightly woven polyesters that I was worried would show needle damage. You know, when the needle goes through and it leaves kind of little pools, or almost with dot, 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 dot in a line, almost a perforated effect. So I did think just whizzing it through the overlocker probably won't be the best treatment, because I was worried that those needles would damage the fabric. I felt like on my sewing machine, a Microtex needle would deal with it okay. Let's have a little tangent then about needles. So as I was thinking all this through, it occurred to me, on my sewing machine, I change the needle dependent on the fabric. So I have universal needles, and I would use a 70 for a cotton lawn or a 90 for a crafting cotton. I have Microtex needles that I would use on a viscose that I worried was going to pull, such as this, or as I say, on this polyester. I have stretch needles that I would use for anything with lycra in. I have denim needles, and I have leather needles. And for every project, I will think about what needle I need and change it. On my overlocker, I never change the needle. Now, I'd say never. If they're blunt and they need changing, I change them out. But I never change the type of needle. They have got a universal 80 in them. And that is what I use for the thickest of sweater knits or the finest of chiffon. This isn't quite chiffon, but it really almost is. Do you do the same? Should I be changing my overlocker needles? I'm not sure. I've not had an overlocker that long. So yeah, tell me what you think, what you do. It just occurred to me as I was doing this. Anyway, I came up with a workaround. I thought really the best treatment for this would be French seams with a Microtex needle. However, I do enjoy French seams actually. I really love sewing them on a crisp cotton. And my other Mayor top, that's exactly what I did, and it is from a cotton. This wispy polyester I thought would be a nightmare for French seams. It doesn't take a press well, and also French seams involves trimming. The only time I've ever cut a hole in a basically finished garment was when I was trimming, and it was a lightweight floaty garment, and I didn't notice that I'd cut through 2 layers. I learnt the hard way, cutting out on our guest bed, that if I ever feel the slightest resistance with my scissors, I need to stop, because I actually cut a hole in the bedsheet doing that. And I realised, I did think, oh, that felt weird, and I didn't stop. And then I looked and I was like, oh, I've cut a big hole in the bedsheet. So with thicker fabrics, just going gingerly, I'm normally all right. But with something as lightweight as this, you don't even feel it. You've cut a hole in it before you've even noticed it got caught in the scissors. So didn't fancy all the pressing, definitely didn't fancy the trimming. So I decided to try a technique that is new to me, which is to sew French seams with the first pass on the overlocker. So that's exactly what I did. I sewed right sides out with a 7mm seam allowance. So I trimmed off just 1mm, leaving a 6mm seam. And then when I turned it to enclose, I had 8mm seam allowance left to sew with a Microtex needle on the sewing machine. And when I did that first pass on the overlocker, I had a look at the seam, and I did take a photo of you that I will insert to show that, yes, I was right, actually. I feel vindicated. The overlocker needles have marred the fabric, and so I'm glad I didn't just overlock it. I just felt like it wouldn't hold up in the wash and it would damage the fabric, and I was right. Now, if I show you this seam, which I have sewn with a Microtex needle on the sewing machine, I have not yet pressed it. I literally finished, with it being a simple top, I overlocked shoulder seam, both sides. Then I pressed them all, turned it, pinned it, and sewed them all. And the next step is pressing, but I just haven't got to it yet. But I will show you this seam, and there's no damage as far as I can see on the fabric from the needles. So I'm really pleased that I chose to do that treatment, and I'll show you what the finished seams look like inside. There is a bit of additional bulk because you've got the overlocking thread in there. But honestly, on a casual top like this, it doesn't bother me in the least. But I do feel like that's a really robust seam that will stand up to the washing machine, which is what I'm most worried about. The next thing I need to address is the neckline. I have fused it instead of stay stitching, as is my preference. And I think what I'll do is pin some self-binding, some black binding, and some white binding, and see which I prefer. These little details are so fun to me, playing fashion designer, trying a few different things, holding them up, seeing which I prefer. Yeah, and I really have no feeling of what I might like best. I do think I want to do a proper binding, as in all the way around and visible on the outside, like I have on this top. I know I could apply a binding, turn it to the inside and top stitch, but I don't think that is my preference on this fabric because it is a little bit sheer and you will be able to see the shadowing through. So I think I'd rather wrap and enclose it all. Now, once I've sorted the neckline, we need to address the hem situation. And I've messed up here and I'm cross with myself. And I'll tell you why. I cut this from a remnant, and as I said last week, it's going to be pretty cropped. And when I've tried it on, it really is pretty cropped. However, I want to wear it with high-waisted jeans. I've tried it with high-waisted jeans and it's plenty long enough at the moment. There isn't a lot of wiggle room for a hem. And the other night, as I was lying in bed falling asleep, I had a brainwave. And I thought, before I sew, you can see where I've gone wrong here, can't you? Before I sew all the side seams, why don't I do a rolled hem using the rolled hem foot on my machine? Because I have a rolled hem foot for my machine and it does an amazing, tiny, neat rolled hem, but it can't go over a seam. As soon as you try and put a seam through it, all hell breaks loose, everything twists. It's bad. And there's no way it can handle a French seam, especially a French seam done on an overlocker with all that bulk. So I thought, while it's still flat, do a rolled hem, then sew the side seams. Wouldn't that have been ideal? Did I remember to do it when I came to sew this up? No, I did not. I had 10 minutes where I could do some sewing, and I just immediately got going with the shoulder seams and the side seams. Annoying. Anyway, I don't know what to do about the hem. I did a couple of tests of a rolled hem on my overlocker. My overlocker, which was a gift for my 40th birthday and was not inexpensive, does a beautiful rolled hem. Don't want to show off, but I'm going to show off. Check out this rolled hem. It's gorgeous. It is just so neat. No fraying on the back, no little loose threads. I love it. However, I didn't want to do it on this, and I've been thinking about why. You can see here I've done a narrower sample, which I probably like even better. I have done a rolled hem on a couple of recent projects. Once on my Georgia's Portfolio Mellow dress, and once on a Vogue dress that I cut down to a top. And I loved it on both of those, but I was really hesitant to do it on this. And I was thinking about why, and it's because on both of those items, the top had a kind of flounce, a ripple around the bottom. This is cut very, very straight. And I just think a rolled hem straight around will look odd. I'm not loving the idea of that. I must remember to change my overlocker back to a normal overlocking setting, because we all know last time I did a rolled hem, I left it on rolled hem. Yeah, trust me, you don't want to sew a shoulder seam with a rolled hem. So the other thought I had, tell me if you think this might work, is to still do the rolled hem on my sewing machine with the rolled hem foot, but just do the straight bit front and back, leave the side seams, and then fold it and hand stitch it. I'm sure I could do a neat job with that actually when I think about it. Maybe I could even hand stitch it and then just top stitch it so I do get a continuous line of stitching around the bottom. I don't know. I'm not going to get to this for a few days because we've got a busy few days coming up. So if you do have any suggestions, I would be so thankful if you would leave them in the comments. Right, that's it for this week. That's all I've got done in the sewing room. I hope you enjoyed hearing about my trip to London, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye.